The fourth episode of The Twilight Zone, about an aging actress named Barbara Jean Trenton, is almost a straight up drama about the fleeting nature of fame and Hollywood success. The director of the episode was Mitchell Leisen, and he certainly knew something about the subject. His 25-year career as a Hollywood film director came to an abrupt halt just 1 year before this episode aired. Was Rod Serling trying to expose the dark underbelly of Hollywood? Or was this simply a clever idea for a story years before its time? Either way, this episode may well have influenced filmmakers and films made decades later. Stick around and find out how.
I am New York City guerrilla filmmaker Sean Weathers.
And I'm Canadian screenwriter and playwright Angus Combe. Watch along with us as we comment on, react to, and review Episode 4 of Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone. It's called The 16mm Shrine, and you are watching Screened.
When these originally, well, not originally, you'd know when they originally aired. When these aired when I was a kid, there were some episodes that aired more than others. It was never even distribution. Certain seasons, certain episodes aired more than others. And this was one that was in heavy rotation. And at that time, I never saw or heard of Sunset Boulevard. When I eventually did, then I saw the huge, overwhelming parallels between the two projects. I would
Yes.
say the main difference is Sunset Boulevard felt more like it had a purpose, like everything was kind of set up and leading to everything. This one feels a little bit more like just ideas floating around. And once I found out it was based on something else, it made more sense because these ideas just don't lend themselves fully to like this being an original concept. Just the way it kind of progresses just doesn't feel as natural as something like Sunset Boulevard, where it's like everything felt purposeful. But nevertheless, this was very entertaining and a worthy entry in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, and I was going to say that, you can't watch this without thinking about Sunset Boulevard. It's just impossible. Um, but yeah, I love the way it looks. I love all the shadows and light here. And I love the idea, the whole idea of the aging movie star and watching her old movies and all that stuff. I think that really appeals to me in some way. Um, but yeah, it's what's interesting about it is that it's really up until the very end of there's no magic or anything. There's no, like some of the other episodes we've watched, there's been obvious magic happening fairly quickly in the episode. But this one is almost just a straight drama. If it wasn't for the very end, you wouldn't know you were in the Twilight Zone particularly, would you?
No. And it's not just that nothing supernatural or sci-fi or horrific happens until the end. It's not just that, it's that and the fact that you didn't know what it was leading up to. Like
Hmm.
after it's over, then you can say, oh yeah, she did mention something about Wish early on. But aside
Yes.
from that, it wasn't leading up to anything. There wasn't like normally with these episodes, when it's kind of like a dark, twisted ending, it's a lead character that has a lot of flaws, and they're almost like an antagonist in a way. And it's like, oh, they got what they deserved, or what goes around comes around. Be careful what you wish for. There's those type of lessons and karma and different things that kick into effect. But there wasn't anything building up. There wasn't like, oh, now this all makes sense type moment. Again, there's a little bit there, a little bit of seeds once you see the ending, but it didn't really, I don't know, the ending didn't really just like have that normal Twilight Zone hit where it's like, oh, it's a effect. I
Yeah.
could be wrong. What were your thoughts? Aside from
Yeah.
the fact that it came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, I think I would agree. Like I do like it, but I don't think it's like one of the great episodes of the Twilight Zone. I don't think we're quite there. I know we keep saying we've got to, see the great episode. I don't think this is one of them, but I do
We
like
are the
again.
worst salesmen to to introduce
Yeah,
people to this. Like when we
yeah,
started this, it was like, all right, this is going to be us introducing people to one of our favorite TV shows of all time. It's going to be
yeah,
younger generation, and they're going to be hesitant, but we're going to really talk them into it. Man,
yes.
we could, if we were car salesmen, we'd be homeless. you know.
Yeah,
We couldn't sell a life raft in the middle of the ocean.
yeah, yeah. That seems to be the case here. But yeah, I don't know. It just I wouldn't say it. Yeah, it just somehow doesn't gel as a really great episode, but it does deal with ideas that I do appreciate, and I certainly like the cast. I like Ida Lupino. Always liked her, and she's a really interesting person as well. Aside from an actress, she directed movies as well. And was kind of a pioneering director in terms of
She directed the classic The Hitchhiker, which is a movie I
yes,
love.
yeah,
Great movie.
yeah, and considered to be the first film noir directed by a woman. And yeah, as a female filmmaker, she was a real pioneer.
The
Um,
episode of The Twilight Zone she directed is an all-time classic.
yeah, well, I was going to say, there is a trivia question that I could ask about this, and you've already kind of partly answered it, but Ida Lupino, um, she was um, she was a couple of firsts. She was the first woman to do something that you may have already referred to, and she was also the first person to do something in regards to the Twilight Zone.
Both of
So,
these are in terms of The Twilight Zone.
in terms of the Twilight Zone, yeah. So she was the first woman
I think
to.
you gave me the answer by saying I kind of mentioned it already.
Yes,
So
yes,
I would say the first person to star in and direct a Twilight Zone episode.
yes. You are right. She is the first.
And
She's the only person to
the
ever
only person.
star. Yeah. So
So is
yeah,
that's the person thing.
that's
And
the
then you
person
said the
thing.
other thing was a woman thing?
It was a woman thing. So
Direct a Twilight Zone episode?
that's right. Yeah, she's the
Oh.
she's the only woman to direct an episode of the Twilight Zone, um, and the only person to both star in and direct an episode. So yeah, that's quite something.
Yeah, yeah. So here we have the meeting with the film mogul. And
Yes,
in, Sunset Boulevard, this scene came much later in when things were like a little
yes,
bit more firmly established and how big of a moment this would be for her. They did
yes,
their best in the confines of 20 some odd mid TV show. But
yes,
again, there wasn't a lot of build up to this to really feel the desperation. A lot of
yeah,
what I think a lot of what doesn't work for me with this episode is a lot of it is just talking. Like we don't see much. I mean,
hmm,
there's a few talking scenes and the only visual we get to really show her desperation is her in that little film room in the dark watching old reels of her film. And they take advantage of the fact that she was an actress. I remember I've done this before in my movies where it's just like, hey, like I'll play someone who was in movies and I'll show footage of me from my movies I did years ago. So I've
yeah,
done that thing where it's just like you play footage of older movies. And Betty Davis, I think, did this for I think Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte.
oh
And
yes,
maybe she did that in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I know she did that in at least one
yeah,
of her movies where
yeah,
they took advantage of the fact that she was a younger actress and they could use that footage in movies when she became older to show a younger version of herself. And this was obviously before de-aging special effects and things like that.
yes,
But yeah, this reaming she gets here, just like you almost sympathize for her because it just comes out of
yeah,
nowhere. Even in
yes.
Sunset Boulevard, like the mogul doesn't really go off on her like that. It
No,
just
I was
felt a
gonna.
little bit forced.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's a much more nice scene in Sunset Boulevard in a way. He treats her well, but here it's not so nice. Yeah, um, and that's Martin
So I definitely
Balsam.
know that the guy who played the mogul here, because he was in a lot of older films, playing like detectives and
Uh,
some of those hard-boiled cop dramas and film noirs. And I think he was even in some westerns and stuff.
yeah, Ted DeCorsia.
Oh, Ted, yeah, I know Ted. He's just one of those actors where you recognize his face and a lot of other things. but don't
Yeah.
necessarily know his name. He's kind of one of those type of actors. And yeah, what also doesn't work for me right here is I guess this is supposed to be her agent slash quasi love interest, like the butler was in Sunset. But
Yes.
after like exiting that scene, he comes here and he degrades the film, that film, what was he, film executive or, film mogul or whatever
Yeah.
that was.
Yeah.
He like say like, how dare you do that? When you're on fire, like I'll make sure not to piss on your corpse or something. But he does
Yes.
that. And just to come into the very next scene, and he basically does almost the same thing to her in this scene. He kind of like
Yeah.
tells her off and hits her with like a hard dose of reality. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
kettle black, come on, man.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And I did find myself wondering, why did he take her into that meeting without telling her anything about it? Because if he had set it up properly, maybe it wouldn't have gone so badly, but he kind of didn't say a word about it to her, and then she was shocked to discover she's not going to have a lead role, or she's not going to be the young love interest. So I'm not sure why he thought that would be a good idea.
No,
But
because that's what they did in Sunset Boulevard.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Certain things it just doesn't add up, And
no,
like the reference point, it's like, oh, it's like, well, this happened because it happened in Sunset Boulevard, not because it makes sense in the story.
yeah. That's, of course, Martin Balsam, who's playing Danny Weiss, her agent.
Oh, of
Uh,
course, Martin. Yeah.
Martin Balsam, yeah, well, he's best known, of course, for playing Bennett in Death Wish 3. Um, well,
One of your favorites.
he's best known to me for playing Bennett in Death Wish 3. But yeah, he's had quite a good career. He's been in a lot of things. 12 Angry Men. He plays the private detective at Psycho. He's in
I think
Breakfast at
Psycho is where
Tiffany's.
most people would know him from.
Yeah, well, he's
That
just been in
scene where he's
a
falling
ton of
down the
things.
stairs.
Yes, yes. But I mean, Death Wish 3. That's his masterpiece, in my opinion. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it obviously can't compare to Sunset Boulevard, but again,
I
as you
like the
said,
way you pause, and it's clear you pause into like look on IMDb or Google to find something. And you'd be like, oh, of course, this is such and such from such and such. It's like, no, it's not. You just stop acting like it's so obvious. You 2 minutes ago, you had no idea who this guy was. And then suddenly you're like, oh, well, yeah, of course this is. Like, come on, dude. We all saw you pause and looking at your screen on that IMDb to find
yeah,
his
well,
name.
everybody everybody who makes a speech has a little card with things on it.
No, I'm just
Um,
saying, but the way you present it, it's like, well, most people may not know who this is, but that's a better way to present it. But you're like, well, of course, this is. It's like, come on, don't
yes,
present it that way. Like we should all know who he is. I'm old as shit and I barely know who the fuck he is. You think
yeah,
most people
yeah,
watching this are gonna know like even the movies that we referenced that he was in? And you and your love for Death
yeah.
Wish 3.
Oh, it's awesome. It's
Nobody's
awesome.
best known for Death Wish 3.
That
Actually, I did
movie.
interview someone when I was doing interviews on my podcast many moons ago.
Oh yes,
I forgot her name, but she was in Death Wish 3, and she was one of the Cenobites in
yes,
Hellraiser. I
yes,
interviewed
yes.
her many moons ago.
She's an author now. She writes books, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Well, why don't you say her name like, oh, well, of course that is. I think it's
yeah,
Barbie something, maybe.
yes, it is. Yeah, I think it's Barbie
I
Wild.
should know. I interviewed her, but it
Yeah,
was a long time ago.
yeah, yeah. I think we follow each other on Twitter, actually. So that's the main reason that I'm
You
aware of that.
see, if you wanted to act like a boss, now you would be like, oh, yes, of course, this is Barbie such and such, and we're Twitter friends. We go way back. We talk
Yeah,
about, Death Wish 3, many times
yeah.
online.
No, that we don't really. We don't. I don't think we've ever talked. But
Well, I'm saying if you remember
uh,
her last name, you could have faked it, maybe.
yes, I think it's Barbie Wild. I think it's Barbie
Yes,
Wild.
I think you're right. That does sound
Yeah,
familiar. I think it is Barbie
yeah,
Wild. Bobby
yeah.
Wild or Bobby Wilds or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Um,
But so this scene right here, if we keep with the progression of this, this
Yes.
is another one that was just like it was so ridiculous. So she's watching the screen where she sees a younger version of herself. By the way, Ida's beautiful. The same thing with Sunset
Yes.
Boulevard. These women are not old, and especially by today's standards. But
Yes.
Ida more so because Ida's stunning in this. But
Yeah.
Ida was like what, like 5, 10 years younger, maybe 10 years younger in that footage, however much younger she was.
Yeah.
But she looks basically the same, just a few wrinkles under the eyes. But the actor
Yeah.
she was with was clearly around her age at the time. And this
Yeah.
actor is like her father. And they're trying to
Yeah.
they're trying to make it seem like, oh,
Yes.
they're the same age and why is she acting like this? I'm like, come on, Twilight Zone. Don't try to pull one over on me. You
Yeah.
know, they're trying to
Yeah.
make it seem like they're gaslighting her.
Yeah.
They're
That's
like,
true.
oh no, listen, you're old. Look how old you are. You see this guy? Yeah, he's your son, old lady.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, come on, man.
Yeah.
These two
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
not the same age. Yeah.
No, 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 that's true. I was shocked at how old he looked here. Um, and I
This
won't
is
say
when I
of
thought this episode was a comedy. I'm
yeah.
like, this is a comedy, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is one of those comedic episodes that I hate so much from the
Oh
Twilight
yes.
Zone. I'm like,
Yes.
come on, stop gaslighting this woman.
Well, this
What are
I
you
won't.
talking about? We were dating back in the day.
Well, I won't say of course, but this actor is Jerome Cowan, and he, interestingly enough, he was in more than 100 films, but he is best remembered
For
for
Death Wish
being
3.
not no no almost as good though. He
Hmm.
plays Miles Archer in the Maltese Falcon. You know, Sam
Oh,
Spade's partner who gets killed at the beginning of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so he's Miles Archer. And he's also, I don't know this movie as well. I've
He
seen it
looks
maybe.
kind of tall.
Yeah,
I'm assuming he didn't stand next to Bogart.
maybe not. But he also plays the district attorney who tries to prosecute Santa Claus in Miracle on 34th Street,
God,
which is,
bastard.
yeah, yeah. I don't know that one as well. I've seen it maybe once, but yeah, the Maltese Falcon,
Hmm.
almost as good as Death Wish 3. But just to let you know, I've looked it up here, and Jerome Cowan was born in 1897.
Jesus, in the
1890,
1800s.
whereas
He was born in the 1800s.
Ida Lupino was born in 1918. So,
Okay, I'm no
but
mathematician, but that is like 21 year age difference.
yes, 21 years. Yeah. So
Uh,
yeah, he is considerably older than her. But
Listen, he's not too much older than her to date her, but I mean,
no,
the idea that they're the same age is ridiculous. Like, look at this
yeah,
footage. Those
yes,
two people are the same age. I don't even think that's Ida, or they would have showed her from the front, right? So I'm assuming that's a
yeah.
different actress in that footage.
I'm not sure, but the actor is John Clark, who I don't particularly know,
Mhm.
but he is definitely a different actor from
Yeah, yeah. I
Jerome
mean, come
Cowan.
on, come on.
Yeah,
Stop gaslighting this woman.
yeah. But just to say a word here about this, the concept of this episode here, which we are going to eventually come to. Um, it reminds me of a
We
lot of
better
other
hurry, it's
things.
almost over.
I know, but essentially, if I don't think this is a spoiler because I'm assuming people have seen this, but this is kind of
How dare you
about
assume people have seen this thing? It was only 1959.
yeah,
Like,
I know,
give
I
it some
know.
time to breathe.
Um,
Jesus.
yeah,
Spoiler alert.
but this is about a person who goes inside a movie. Essentially, she becomes she enters the movie essentially, and Woody Allen's movie, The Purple Rose of Cairo, from 1985, is the opposite, where a character comes out of the movie. And I feel there's a similar thing going on there, where you've got an unhappy character who's kind of longing for something that she's seeing in the movie. And it's kind of the opposite solution, where the guy comes out of the movie instead of she goes into the movie. But I think there's an interesting parallel there. And there's other movies like Pleasantville, 1998, and also The Final Girls, which is about
So
someone.
not to cut you off, but You see
Yeah.
that scream right there? That's intriguing. It makes it seem like something horrific happened. And it's like, oh
Yes.
yeah, and obviously that fade is for commercial. You'd expect, all
Yes.
right, this is a dark twist. But
Yes.
it's not a dark twist, which is kind of, it's like, whatever.
Well,
Go ahead,
I
finish your
mean,
story. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I was just saying the Final Girls is about a young woman who finds herself inside a 1980s slasher film.
Mm.
So similar kind of
Oh yeah, I saw that
ideas.
slasher movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where she meets her mother inside the slasher film because her mother
Yeah, and her
was
friends
the actress.
die, but if she
Yeah.
makes it out, I think they live or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember. But these are just examples of movies where characters enter the movie or they kind of come out of the movie. And I feel like this might be a really early episode or an early example of that. So
Mhm.
maybe it influenced some of these people who grew up watching The Twilight Zone. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But
But
I just don't understand what the point of this episode was. So you get the
mhm,
horrific ending, you get the traumatized servant slash maid or whoever she is
yes,
here, and
yes,
it makes it seem like something horrific happened. And it's like, okay, if you live in the past, you'll turn into that pillar of stone. Like I think it was a Sodom and Gomorrah story where it's like, they as they're leaving Sodom and uh I think Sodom's wife daughters look back and they turn into pillar of salt or something like that. I don't know. It's been a while since
yeah,
I've heard that Bible story, but it's the old adage of, like don't look back or else.
mm, yes,
And here she is, she keeps looking back in the past. And
mhm,
the point of that whole Bible story is like, don't look back but what's the point of this story? It's like, all right, don't look back or else what? All your dreams are gonna come true?
yeah,
Like where's the horror in
yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah. I know. And I mean, you talk about her screaming. I mean, I don't even know how she can tell that something bad has happened because there's always movies with Ida
Her in
Lupino's
them, right?
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she looks up and sees her in the movie. That should just be like, oh, it's another movie. I don't recognize that one or something, you know?
Or she could be like, why does she look so old in that movie? Like,
Yeah, that's right.
well, that's the
Yeah,
only difference, basically.
yeah, yeah. And she throws her scarf there. And we're, as soon as I saw that, I thought, oh, yeah, this is going to be the twist, which he sort of wished he did for the pilot episode in a way, um, where you
With the
see
movie
something.
ticket.
Yeah, and here, she throws it in the movie, but we will see it appear in reality.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is an interesting thing because it almost feels like the start of a story. Like now she's inside this movie, but does that mean if they rewind it and play it again, she's going to be there again and she's going to do the same things, or is she going to not be there because she exited? She walked off the screen. Is she now gone into some other universe? I don't really know.
Yeah, because
Well,
that is a real film.
yeah,
So is the real film constantly changing? Is she in
yeah,
the real film? If you damage the film, do you
yeah,
kill her?
yeah. These
If
are
you
all
stop
interesting.
playing it, does she not exist? Or she
Yeah,
only exists when you play it?
very good questions. Yeah. She could find that she's just in darkness right now and she needs him to turn the film on so she can live.
Or she could look back and say, what's wrong? Get me out of here, or something
Yeah,
like that to make it like
yeah,
truly horrific.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Something. But
yeah,
it's just a twist. It's almost like an M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie where it's just like, here's
yeah,
a twist. A twist for what reason? Just for a twist? It's
yeah,
nonsensical. It makes no sense. Like, come on, give us something
yeah,
real to go on. Don't just do a twist to do a twist. But this again,
yeah,
this was a very early episode, so he's trying to figure these things out. But
yes,
my only so this was fairly entertaining. If I never saw
yeah,
Sunset Boulevard, or when I saw this before seeing Sunset Boulevard, I kind of liked it a little bit more. But having
yeah,
seen Sunset Boulevard and having seen a lot better episodes of The Twilight Zone, I would say this lacks in originality and it lacks in punch with the twist at the end.
yeah, yeah. It really can't compare to Sunset Boulevard, but it is enjoyable for what it is, and always good to see Ida Lupino, and of course Martin Balsam from Death Wish 3.
Yeah, of course, Mark. Yeah,
Always, always a thrill to see him. So,
love Mark.
you know, and it's only 20 some minutes, so it's not a big ordeal to sit through or anything. It's very easy to take.
Very
But
easy.
yeah, kind of makes you just want to watch Sunset Boulevard again, though, in a way.
Yeah, yeah. So, what are we, 4 episodes in? We've yet to see a classic.
That's right, but I know we're getting closer. We got
We're getting there, man. That first episode was a good prototype. The
Yeah,
second episode was a step back in my eyes because I didn't like the comedy aspect of it.
yeah,
The slapstick nature, the casting was a little bit off. Third
yeah,
episode, the acting was really good, but everything else was kind of lacking. And this
yeah,
one, again, it's you love Ida. Some of the ideas are kind of there, but a little half baked.
yeah,
So hopefully episode 5 will be that gem that we're looking for.
yeah. I hope so.
All right, well, for Angus Combe, this is Sean Weathers. You've been watching Screened.